Hello everyone, welcome to Get My Class. So let's solve this question here. It says when the body encounters a pathogen for the very first time, it generates a response called dash response that is of dash intensity. And the options are option A primary high, option B secondary low, option C primary low, option D secondary high. So let us understand the question. It says when the body encounters a pathogen for the very first time, it generates a response called dash response that is of dash intensity. So that means they're asking when when first time, for the very first time, when a pathogen enters into the body, a particular pathogen, for example. Okay, so when it enters into the body, what is that response called as? Of course, our immune system will respond against it, right? What is that response called as, and how will be the intensity of that response? Okay, so before we look into the correct answer, so let us just quickly discuss about the type of responses what the immune system gives. Okay, so if we talk about immune system, there are two types of main response against a particular pathogen. The first one is called as the primary response. Okay? And the second type is called as the secondary response. So the primary response is elicited when the first time any pathogen enters. Okay, the pathogen enters for the first time entry of a particular pathogen. It is not that all the pathogen have to enter for the first time. So of course we know that there are many pathogens in air, water, everywhere. And whenever any pathogen which enters for the first time, this is the type of response which will be seen. That is primary response. Okay. So here primary response where they will try to kill that particular antigen or the pathogen. Okay. And by the time it responds, okay, the intensity will be very low because it will take time for the body to identify the antigen and then create antibody against it. So the intensity will be very low. Okay, because it has to, for the intensity to be high, there should be many number of B cells and T cells, which actually participate in the immune response. B cells and T cells. But first time when the pathogen enters, body takes time for the production of B cells and T cells. So that is why the initial response will be primary and it will be very low intensity. But when the same pathogen enters the body the second time, okay, second time, and even in future, how many number of times. So that time what happens, these B cells and T cells which have been produced, they create memory cells. Okay, these can be called as memory cells. Okay, they'll have the memory because they would have already recognized that particular pathogen. So second time already we'll be having many cells which will produce antibodies. Okay, so lots amount of antibodies will be there, and already in the body antibodies would have been produced because of the primary infection. But by the secondary infection, there will be multiplication or amplification of these cells, B cells and T cells. So the intensity will be very high. So high intensity. In case of what? In case of secondary response, because their memory cells will be there, which will be ready to produce antibodies. And already antibodies will be there in the blood because they have already seen that pathogen or identified that pathogen during first response. Okay, so let us see. So the question says when the body encounters a pathogen for the very first time, it generates a response called as what? Called as primary response, that is of low intensity. Option A says primary, that is correct, but it says high intensity, which is wrong. Option B says secondary. No, this happens in the second time infection. And it says low, again it is wrong. Option C says primary, yes, and low intensity, that is also yes. So option C should be the correct answer. Option D says secondary, which is totally wrong because as I told you, secondary response is called when the pathogen enters for the second time. Okay, so what is the correct answer? The correct answer is option C. I hope you understood the explanation. Thank you, everyone.